Welcome everybody to WiseTake.com MMA DFS Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff, aka Wigsplitter. We're going to go over UFC 227, TJ Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt 2. You can find me on Twitter at JEFPO. If you're not already a WiseTake.com subscriber, head on over to WiseTake.com. And you can pick up an MMA event pass. You'll gain access to the live stream that we put out the day of the event. We go over all the picks that I have after full fight video, weigh-ins. We already had a cancellation on this card, so we're down to 12 fights. But let's get into the action. The first fight on the undercard, the Fight Pass early prelims, we have Marlon Chito Vera going up against Willy, the Beastmaster Burin. These guys, Chito Vera is, I like him, but unfortunately his salary at $9,300 is ridiculous. The line came out for this fight. Well, he was a minus 550 favorite. So DraftKings usually follows along what the Vegas odds are, and they just dumped his price into the non-existent how the hell am I going to play you realm. Going up against Willy Burin, 6,900. He's a 425 underdog. This is actually a fairly intriguing matchup. Chito Vera is a solid striker. He trains out of Team Oyama. They have a good. They teach their fighters well. They have a good fight plan that they usually go into each fight. They prepare their fighters very well. Willy Burin is a Chinese regional fighter. He has a solid foundation in grappling. He's going to spam the takedowns against Chito Vera, which I think is going to be his downfall. I think Chito Vera is probably going to catch him in a submission. Burin on the regional scene, he does have 4 submission victories. To his credit, he also has a submission loss. I think Chito probably catches him with a submission, possibly second or third round. But I do see this fight as possibly going to a decision. At 9,300, I would rather pay down to a couple other fighters or pay up for Demetrius Johnson at 9,300. I do believe Chito Vera will be low owned on this fight card, and definitely do not only because of his pricing, but his point output history isn't very intriguing. He hasn't shown that he can exceed his value too often. So at 9,300, it's going to be pushing it. Even with a second round submission, he'll make value. I think he'd probably be a good cash play. But I like Marlon Chito Vera to win the fight. Moving on to the next fight, which is not very intriguing to me, at all, is Daniel Dynamite Taylor going up against Willy Magnum Jiang. From the fights that I've seen about Jiang, is she's a finisher. She has solid power in her hands. She has 9 knockouts on her record. She also has 6 submission victories. Let's see here. She's on a 7-fight win. She has 7 fights that she won in 2017. She's a very active fighter. Her salary is $8,700. Daniel Taylor's salary is $7,500. Honestly, I will never roster Daniel Taylor just because of her fighting style. I do get the fact that this fight is in LA, and I believe she is a Los Angeles County sheriff. So she'll have a lot of support in the crowd, but they're not going to be in the cage with her. Daniel Taylor does a lot of circling of the cage. She picks and pops her shots. Not necessarily a very point accumulator. She's a point fighter, but she doesn't accumulate majority of the points. She's very small for this weight class. I think Zhang's going to have a huge height and reach advantage on her, which isn't necessarily too big of a thing, but at the same time, Taylor's basically, she's just going to run the whole fight. And if Zhang is able to get her hands on her, maybe get her in the clinch, get it dirty, it's possible that Zhang could definitely maybe do some damage and maybe score well on the cards. I think this fight's probably going to go to decision as well. I think Zhang probably would be a better cash play than more of a GPP play just because of the potential low score output in this fight. I think I talked a little too much about this, but I would definitely, I'm never rostering Daniel Taylor. Moving on to the next fight, we have Ricardo Ramos going up against Jiang, Mr. Perfect Hulking. Ricardo Ramos, if you saw his last fight, he had a pretty it was a well-timed spinning elbow stoppage of Fareed Zahabi's little brother, Ahmad Zahabi. It was a fairly even fight up until that point where he caught him with the flashy strike. I think Ricardo Ramos throws a lot of these strikes because he knows that he has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he's not afraid to get taken down. He has 6 submission victories to his credit in his career. His salary is $8,600. Kang's salary is $7,600. I think Kang, a lot of people are overlooking him just because he had a long layoff because of the 2-year, I believe it's 2 years required military service that he had to do for the South Korean Army or military service, I believe. I'm not sure if it was Army or whatever they call them out there, but I think this is a fairly even matchup. I don't think it's going to be as one-sided as people are leading it to believe. I like Kang in this fight. I think his strength and size may play into overwhelming Ramos and just pressuring him. I think this fight's probably going to go to decision as well. And you have to pick a couple underdogs in this card, especially roster-wise. I think Kang is a live dog. Definitely. Ramos does have submission and KO upside. Kang has been stopped by both in his career. So potentially Ramos is definitely a solid GPP play, but keep in mind this is my first look. Very minimal fight video that I've watched so far this week, and these are just preliminary first glances going over what I see so far. Now moving on to the next fight, like I said, I do like Kang as an underdog, but I do see paths to victory for Ricardo Ramos. But if he can't pull that magic trick out of his hat like he did against Zahabi, it's possible it's going to be a grindy type fight with Kang working with a lot of takedowns. And you can't sleep on Kang's submission ability either. So moving on to the next fight, the last fight on the Fight Pass early prelims, we have Alex Perez going up against Jose Shorty Torres. Both these guys, man, I like them. Jose Shorty Torres, he's a proven winner. He has an insane amateur career. I believe he was like 30-0. He was a 2-weight division champion. He was actually, before his last fight against let's see, his last fight he was going up against was Jared Brooks. Yeah, Jared Brooks, where he knocked himself out. He was actually going for a third. He was going to try to go for 3 different weight classes. I think he was going to move up to 145 to see if he could have 3 belts at one time. So that's pretty interesting. He was actually, so I understand why he looked a little. He didn't look himself in that debut fight against Jared Brooks that he took on short notice. Because you gotta, if you take into context that he was moving up in weight to 145 to take on another champion for that belt. And then to get the call from the UFC, which you're probably not going to want to turn down, to fight Jared Brooks on short notice at 125. So I mean, he had weight that he had to cut in order to get down to that weight class. So I think he's probably going to learn from that with a full fight camp, going up against a guy like Alex Perez, he fought on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. He looked pretty good. Perez is a solid grappler. He has aggressive takedowns. He's a well-rounded fighter. But I think this is going to be a fight where these guys are going to just, I think their grappling may negate itself and it just turns into a standing battle. If that happens, I think Jose Torres is going to have to show why he's such a blue chip prospect and, work his way to tiring Perez out, because Perez has shown slight cardio issues. I'm not saying that he gasses a lot, but he has shown where he does get tired just because of the aggressive takedowns that he does have. So he sort of tends to not necessarily fade, but he does get a little tired, just like as any fighter in the cage. But this fight probably is going to go to decision. I think Torres is going to be a little more active on the feet, and I think he will definitely so Alex Perez's seller is 8,400. Jose Torres' seller is 7,800. I like Torres. It's a fairly close, according to Vegas. I definitely think it's close. I like Jose Torres in this fight at 7,800. You definitely could take a flyer on Perez in a GPP, but I do think Torres is probably going to piece him up on the feet, or not necessarily piece him up. I think he's going to do a little bit more on the feet. And be a little more active, have a little more precision striking, and he will outpoint him for the decision victory. Now, moving on to the next fight, we have a very intriguing matchup with Matt Sales going up against Shaman Moraes. Matt Sales looks like an average dude. He doesn't necessarily come off as the bodybuilder type or anything like that, but Matt Sales' salary is 8,300. Shaman Moraes is 7,900. Excuse me. Both these guys are very solid strikers. Let's see. Let me turn the page. Get my notes. Matt Sales is he's a training partner of Dominic Cruz, longtime training partner of Dominic Cruz. Shaman Moraes is a tough Brazilian striker. This fight, I think this is going to be a tough fight. I think you're going to have to get this fight right in DraftKings, because I think this is going to be one of those ones where it could make or break your lineup. 8,300 for Sales and 7,900 for Moraes. Moraes is coming off of a tough, very tough debut fight against Zabit Magomedsharipov. He lost in the third round via anaconda choke. Matt Sales, I just think a lot of people overlook him. I like Matt Sales in this fight. At 8,300, he has 6 wins by knockout. I have a feeling that this fight is probably I don't think this fight's probably going to last very long. Maybe second round. I think Matt Sales gets the finish. Possibly second round stoppage due to strikes. Moving on to the next fights, we have Ricky Simone going up against Montel Jackson. Ricky Simone's salary is $8,500. Montel Jackson's salary is $7,700. Simone, he had a pretty interesting win in his last fight against Davashili, and it looked like he choked him out, but Davashili was doing this weird, like, he's like almost like he was convulsing on the mat. But the weird part of it is when they stopped the fight, Simone got off, and Davashili got up. Instinct was to get up, right? The ref stopped him and said, no, don't move. Now, to me, that's a little awkward. Now, I mean, I had to watch it again. I rewatched it, and I was like thinking, did he just really tell him not to move, like not to get up? Like, and then they called it like he's out. Like, I don't understand it. So that was a little controversy there. But Ricky Simon has solid striking. He has good grappling. Montel Jackson is a very athletic power striker. He's a little bit of a shorter guy, not necessarily huge short, but I mean, he's going to be the smaller guy in the cage, but he does have power in his hands. He is making his debut. I think this is going to be a tough fight for him in his debut. I think Simon's going to have a little bit more experience in there with him. Technically, Montel Jackson is undefeated. He's 6-0. He's 3-0 in his amateur career, 3-0 in his professional career. Simon definitely has way more experience than he does. He's beaten, higher level talent. Like I said, he beat Davashili. But other than that, I mean, it's still all regional scene guys, LFA. He won a split decision on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. So, but Montel Jackson, he either wins by submission or by knockout, or he goes to decisions in his so far. On his amateur career, he does have 2 TKO wins with the submission victory as well in his amateur career. But I think Jackson is definitely worth a GPP flyer at 7,700. Simone at 8,500. You're hoping for a finish. With him being the favorite, it's still pretty much close to a pick'em. It's minus 125 for Simone and plus 105 for Jackson. I mean, not that I'm saying you'd have to hedge this fight to jump up in the leaderboards, but if Jackson is able to pull off the upset, I think he's probably going to be lower owned of majority of these underdogs. But I like Ricky Simone to pull off the victory. Moving on to the next fight, we have Pedro, the young Punisher Munoz, going up against Brett, the Pikey Johns. I think that loss that Johns had against Aljamain Sterling opened his eyes. I think he had to. I think it was that that first loss was. It was an eye opener for him, and it probably. I saw some stuff on Instagram. It looked like he went back in the gym and he started training hard. Pedro Munoz, his salary is 8,800. He's a minus 250 favorite. Brett Johns' salary is 7,400. He's a plus 210 underdog. I think this is going to be a nice, gritty grappling battle. One thing that I think Brett Johns is going to have to be cognizant of is Munoz has 6 wins by guillotine choke. He has solid striking. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brett Johns is very scrappy. I think he's going to have to be very aggressive with his takedowns and have a lot of top control with Munoz and avoid putting himself into a dangerous predicament where he is susceptible to getting submitted by Pedro Munoz with the guillotine choke. At 8,800, you're definitely going to need a finish from Munoz because he's not necessarily active in his striking. In his majority of his fights, he averaged anywhere between 60 30 to 60, 69 significant strikes. So he's not going to score very well if it goes to decision. It could be right around 80 points. He's not necessarily an aggressive grappler where he's going to shoot for a lot of takedowns. He actually gets taken down more than he actually shoots for takedowns. So that's not something to be very appealing. So he's going to definitely need a stoppage or a high output full of strikes. So this is basically a dog or pass fight right here. And I think Brett Johns definitely has the dog in him. I like Brett Johns with the upset by split decision in this fight. So at 7,400, even a split decision victory, possibly multiple takedowns, as long as he can avoid the guillotine submission, I think he's going to have a good opportunity to pull off the upset. Now, moving on to the main card, we have Thiago de Lima Marreta Santos going up against Kevin the Trailblazer Holland. Thiago Santos, man, his salary is $9,200. Kevin Holland's salary is $7,000. Marreta is minus 365 favorite. Kevin Holland is a 305 underdog. Now, this fight is very intriguing because which Thiago Santos are we going to get? We're going to get the Thiago Santos that basically ran through guys like Jack Hermanson, Jared Mearshall, Jack Marshman, Anthony Smith, or are we going to get the getting subbed by Eric Spicely or knocked out by David Brandt, Thiago Santos? That's the game you play when you roster Thiago Santos. Now, in those victories, KO victory against Anthony Smith, 124 points. KO victory, Hermanson, 114 points. KO victory, Mearshart, 106 points. In his loss against David Brandt, 7 points. In his loss against Eric Spicely, 4 points. So he is a definition, a true GPP play. It's either going to be you're going to be sitting pretty with 100 plus points, or you're going to be kicking yourself in the nuts saying, why in the F did I freaking not take a flyer on Kevin Holland in a GPP? Because you don't know what you're going to get with Thiago Santos. But it seems like against mid-level to low-level fighters, he does extremely well. Against guys that are on his level, or I don't know. I had a thought that maybe if he's on his level or whatever, but Kevin Holland definitely is definitely a dog you can play in a GPP for sure, just because of the fact that Thiago Santos is not necessarily untrustworthy, but at minus 365 and 9,200, it's going to be a boom or bust play. And if you get it wrong at 9,200, majority of your salary is taken up on a gamble. But I do like Santos to pull off the victory. Vegas sees this as not going to decision, so it's a possibility. I like Kevin Holland as a GPP play. Thiago Santos definitely GPP play because it's a boom or bust play. Basically, it's what it boils down to. Now move on to the next fight. We have Polyana Viana going up against JJ Eldridge. Now, Polyana Viana is coming off of her debut win up against Stevenson, where it was a first round submission. She basically dominated her from the bell. She had 12 significant strikes, 1 takedown, reversal, 4 advances. She scored 118 points. JJ Eldridge is a very gritty fighter. Majority of her fights go to decision. The only thing she's going to have to do is she's going to have to avoid being bullied. She's going to have to sort of push the pressure against Viana. She's definitely going to have to fight out of her element. and avoid the takedown, because once Viana gets her down, she's a wizard down there. Viana's salary is $8,900. Eldridge's salary is $7,300. I have a feeling this fight goes to decision. I think Eldridge is crafty enough to keep this fight standing. I think she ends up in the long run. I think she ends up losing the fight. I think Viana is, even though this is only going to be her second fight, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how she handles that second and third round when her opponent is still standing and she hasn't submitted her or stopped her, because she does have 4 knockout wins. To her credit, to her career, she does have 6 submission wins as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how she deals with the adversity of the second and third round. Is she gonna melt? Is she gonna be a front runner and just sort of like start losing it? We'll have to see. But I do think she's gonna have to definitely be more active on the feet and just outpoint JJ Eldridge to a decision victory. At $8,900, I think she's probably a safer cash play than she is for a GPP. But if you feel that she's going to get the stoppage of Eldridge, who's a very durable fighter, then take that flyer on in a GPP. But at $8,900, you can definitely go up or go down with guys that have a little bit higher upside. Now moving on to the next fight, we have Cub Swanson versus Renato Moicano. Now, Cub Swanson's salary is $7,100, and Renato Moicano is $9,100. Now, man, if this fight was a couple years ago, I would definitely be all over Cub Swanson at $7,100. But I think he's just not himself anymore. If you look at his last fight against Frankie Edgar, I mean, he had challenges pulling the trigger. He just seemed tentative in his striking. And then in his loss to Ortega, I mean, he was doing okay, but he still was a little tentative throwing his strikes. But I think that's just because of how dangerous Ortega is with the submission ability. And then he had that 5-round decision victory over Artem Lobov, where he had 209 significant strikes, but Artem Lobov has arms like a crocodile, super short arms. So Cub Swanson just pieced him up on the feet, and then he looked. I think he peaked out. I think he had that solid win against Doo Ho Choi back in 2016. That was a great fight for him, but I don't see that happening against Renato Moicano. Moicano is a well-rounded fighter. He can strike with anybody, take people down. He has submission ability. His last loss was actually, it was just a little bit of a brain lapse. I mean, all it was a technique got him. If he wouldn't have wrapped the leg, it wouldn't have allowed Ortega to pull the submission off. But it was a fairly close fight up until that submission. But I like Renato Moicano to pull this win off at 9,100. He definitely could get. Let's see here. Yeah, he definitely could get this. I have it down as a possible second round submission for Renato Moicano. And at 9,100, there's probably going to be a decent amount of strikes in the first round, feeling out process, maybe a couple takedowns between the two. But I like Renato Moicano with the submission, possibly second round. He's going to catch Cub Swanson. Now moving on to the co-main event. This is going to be something that's going to be reminiscent of something we've seen before. Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson going up against Henry the Messenger Cejudo. Cejudo's been looking good in his past few fights since that loss to DJ. It's not like he's he's actually evolved his game a little bit. He did the smart fight plan against Wilson Hayes. He didn't try to take him down. He stood and traded with him, and ended up getting the knockout victory over Hayes, and then over Perez. That was a basically a mauling. I mean, he just basically laid and prayed his way to victory. And then coming up against DJ, Demetrius Johnson is just, I mean, a lot of people want to debate whether or not he's the GOAT or not, but he makes it look so easy. I mean, when he's in there, like, he literally game plans for his opponent and finds the weakness. Like, he knew that in their first fight that maybe Cejudo thought that he was going to be able to go for the takedown or maybe try takedowns. And go for there, but Cejudo was actually able to take DJ down briefly in that fight. Excuse me, but I see this fight playing out pretty much the same way as the first fight did. I think it's going to be a striking battle, unless Cejudo comes in with a grappling heavy offense where he's basically going to lay and pray his way to a victory. I don't see that happening for 5 rounds. I think Demetrius Johnson, if he does get taken down, he'll get right back up, which plays well for Cejudo, because theoretically, if you think about this, if this fight goes to 5 rounds, and let's say Cejudo lands, I don't know, and let's say he lands 1.5 takedowns per round, you're looking at roughly 7.5 takedowns, and that would be roughly that would be roughly 7.5 times 5. That would be roughly 37.5 points, not including the amount of significant strikes landed in a 5-round fight, if it goes that far. I think Demetrius Johnson is definitely going to be able to prove again why he's should be considered one of the greatest of all time, because he's just on another planet when it comes to his striking. Like, grant you, Cejudo is a gold medal wrestler, and that's nothing to take away from him, but if eventually he's not going to be able to, if he takes him down and then Demetrius Johnson gets back up, it could be a little frustrating, and he might get him off his game plan. It'll turn into a striking battle, and that's where Demetrius Johnson will be able to outland him and coast to a very decisive 5-round victory, if he doesn't get the second or third round stoppage in this fight. But I like Demetrius Johnson for the win. I'm not exactly sure how it plays out, but I do think that he's going to pull off the victory. I think Cejudo's going to look decent. He's going to look improved, but when you're going up against one of the guys at the top of their game, you can't be one-dimensional, and once that one dimension doesn't work, you're gone. Now, moving on to the main events, we have TJ Dillashaw against Cody No Love Garbrandt. Now, I am torn on this fight because I went back and rewatched their first fight, and I remember the lead up to this fight. There was a lot of bad blood, a lot of animosity. There was a lot of just full on shit slinging back and forth between Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw. It was mostly on Cody's side. I think he was mentally out of his game from the get-go. I think he let the issue with TJ Dillashaw leaving Team Alpha Male for Dwayne Bang Ludwig. I think he let that cloud his focus. He may not admit that, but I think it did. Just because of the way he went into the fight. Like Garbrandt is a very good counter puncher. Like the counter punch that he throws with power is that's how the majority of his fights go. Like he counter punches, but in this fight against Dillashaw, the first fight against Dillashaw, he came forward, which played right into Dillashaw's game, where Dillashaw is a very crafty veteran, solid striker, especially with the nuances that Dwayne Ludwig and Dillashaw knew from training with Garbrandt. I think they knew that if they could get him into coming forward as opposed to him counterpunching, that they had the advantage. And I think when that fight pulled off and Dillashaw was able to come back with that win, and he let off that insane primal scream at the end, just like, ah! That was like a crowning moment on that victory. Now, if Cody Garbrandt can stick to his game plan and stick to what made him, such a highlight reel fighter, I think Dillashaw's going to have a rough night. Now, if Dillashaw can somehow bait Cody into coming forward and leaving his fight plan, Dillashaw's going to have the advantage. Now, from a DFS standpoint, man, Dillashaw seller's 8,200, Garbrandt seller's 8,000. I mean, if you're making multiple lineups, I definitely would say, if you feel more, Dillashaw, then go Dillashaw. If you feel more Garbrandt, go Garbrandt. But I think this is pretty much a pick'em. It's definitely a pick'em. Dillashaw at the time of this recording, he's a minus 120 favorite. Garbrandt is a plus 100 underdog. I mean, I don't think this fight goes. I think there's going to be a stoppage here, and it's probably going to be one or the other. I'm going to lean Dillashaw gets a stoppage on Garbrandt, and he retains his belt. I think that's how I feel this fight plays out. Am I comfortable with that? No, because both these guys they both have proven winners. They're both very powerful. I think if it comes down to power, I think Cody may have a slight edge. Actually, he has the edge. Dillashaw, when it comes to volume, I think he can out volume Garbrandt and just frustrate him and bait him into his game. But I think Dillashaw is going to retain the belt. And I like Dillashaw for GPPs and cash. I think Cody Garbrandt is definitely a GPP play. So a quick run through of the UFC 227 first look. Keep in mind this is my first look. I haven't necessarily dove too much into it, but this is who I like so far. I like TJ Dillashaw for GPPs, Cody Garbrandt or GPP and cash play, Garbrandt GPP, Demetrius Johnson GPP cash, Cejudo punt value play, Meccano, Poliano Viana, Thiago Santos is a coin toss. Kevin Holland is a coin toss. GPP plays both of those. Brett Johns value. Ricky Simone should pull off the victory. Matt Sell, Shimon Moraes. I think that fight is very intriguing. I think if you get that fight right, you're probably going to be close to the top of the GPP ladder. Alex Perez and Jose Torres. I think Torres is probably going to look a lot better in this fight. I like Kyung Ho Kang, Wiley Zhang, and Chito Vera. And I think Willy Burin is definitely just because he could spam the takedowns, but I think he's going to put himself in a predicament where he gets submitted. But that's my first look for UFC 227. I appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen to me talk about MMA and DFS. If you're not already a WhiteStake.com subscriber, like I said, you can head on over to WhiteStake.com. An MMA event pass will grant you access to UFC 227 premium content. The premium article comes out Friday. The live stream is Saturday morning. This fight it's going to be in California, so it's 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern. So the live stream will probably be roughly 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. We'll go over all the fights in detail. Question and answer session. You can always hit me up on Twitter at JEFPO. If you sign up for a monthly MMA event pass subscriber, it's $29.99. You can get, or if you do the MLB monthly or yearly all sport subscriptions, you'll gain access to our Slack chat, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have that app for all the premium subscribers that have signed up for it, and it's 24 hours a day, 7-day access to all of our pros, including myself. But you have to be a monthly or yearly subscriber for that to take place in order for you to gain access to the Slack app, which will gain you access to MLB, MMA, NASCAR, PGA, all that fun stuff. If you're listening to us on Podbean, iTunes, leave us those 5-star reviews. We definitely appreciate it. If this is your first time watching us on YouTube, make sure you click that subscribe button. Give us that thumbs up button. Leave us comments in the comment section, or questions. And as always, have fun out there and make that money. Yes.